And good morning, everyone. Before I even start today's topic, I think I would need to address the meeting yesterday at the Brevard County Commission meeting in Viera, Florida, that I attended and spoke at briefly. There were five of us that spoke, six of us from the Occupy movements here in Brevard County that attended the meeting because they were passing a couple of, I don't even know what you call them. They weren't really even ordinances, but rules or whatever that would potentially limit people's right to free speech and freedom of assembly on government properties that involve 11,000 or 1,100 properties in the county, plus leased properties. It was very broadly written and could easily be used to control and limit our freedoms as guaranteed under the Constitution. And we went to address that issue, and it was actually televised on local television, although I haven't seen it. At the Occupy meeting that I was at in Cocoa last night, there was a couple there that actually had watched us do our thing. And the result of that was that the county commission tabled those two rules for further investigation, and we were all very, very much surprised and pleased that they seemed, anyway, to want to protect the rights of freedom of speech and freedom to assemble, which I wish every city and municipality and state and the federal government would get through their thick heads that that's their obligation by law. By law. I also watched a video this morning by, oh God, what's his name? The guy from MSNBC who now is on Mox News, the commentator that was a sports, God, I can't remember his name. I like him a lot. My brother doesn't, but I do. Anyway, he was commenting on how much we need Michael Bloomberg and his attempts to clamp down on the Occupy Wall Street movement in New York City are ultimately only going to fuel it and make it spread, which, folks, you need to understand that that's all the movements of the dark that try to control everything. That's ultimately going to be the result. They're not going to put it out. They're only going to inflame it more. It's beyond the control of the controllers to control. That's a tongue twister, isn't it? Anyway, today's title is Yes, We Can Thrive by Awakening and Co-Creating. Thrive is a new documentary created by Proctor Gamble, heir to the Proctor Gamble conglomerate. Among others, it features work by Nassim Haramein, born in Geneva, Switzerland in 1962. His discoveries in physics are mystical. We live and move and have our beings in God, and we are made to thrive. To me, this is one spiritual implication of the Occupy movement. Let me start out by saying that I worked as a process analyst for Procter & Gamble for over 5 years, back in the 60s, 70s. I was in the paper-making division, which then it was called Charmin Paper Products Company, and I was actually one of the very first lab technician hired at Procter & Gamble, or at Charmin, before we even had our own lab set up. I mean, it hadn't even been built yet. It was a new factory in Mahoupany, Pennsylvania at the time. And as I said, I was one of the first ones hired in that capacity. I was the first one hired in that capacity, and later became process analyst, and later quit, much to the chagrin of my supervisor, who said that was my calling. Well, no, my calling was a little bit different than that. And I never survived very long in the corporate environment because I'm too headstrong, even as that supervisor learned more than once when I challenged things. I'm such a radical. Anyway, I thought that was interesting that this Mr. Gamble that created this documentary was from a company that I worked for early on in my life. And Nassim Haramein is also another one that I've been very fascinated with his work, especially the part that I alluded to. A fish in water doesn't know what water is. And a bird flying in the air doesn't know what air is. And humans living in God don't know what God is, which is why there's some people that are atheists. God is everywhere. We can call it energy, we can call it vacuum, we can call it lots of things. But it's the element in which we live and which is our essentialness, which is our beingness. We live and move and have our being in God. That's the implication of the Occupy movement. Because God is awakening. The phoenix is rising within the culture that seemed to be so negative. As Thrive points out, it's a system. The matrix is a system rigged apparently against life and against humanity especially, but against life itself. But can that survive? Can that non-sustainable mentality survive as people awaken? Absolutely it cannot. We are beginning to recognize that we do have our being in God. And the Occupy movement demonstrates that even with all of its apparent fragmentation, we are waking up and recognizing that the world that we live in, the world we have co-created together, is not a world that we want to stay in, and we don't want it to be this way anymore, which is what the awakening is all about. And I'm still trying to think of his name. I should have put it on the other computer. God, I'm going to look it up here real quick. Oh, Keith Olbermann. My God, how could I forget Keith Olbermann's name? But I did. Anyway, as he pointed out so aptly in his commentary, we need people like Michael Bloomberg and people holding dark positions like Obama, who may be a light worker. Actually, I had a video some time back, months ago now, light workers on the dark side. And Obama certainly has been playing that role since he became president, and many still think that he's going to be one of the light workers that actually helps us in this liberation thing. I haven't seen evidence of that yet, but many still believe that, and I'm not going to rule out the possibility that it's true, because we're going to be surprised in many, many, many areas where things happen over the next days, weeks, months, and no longer than that. It's not going to be years, folks. The awakening is accelerating. The awakening is upon us, and there's nothing on this planet that can stop it. The game plan of the controllers, as I said, is failing, and it's failing fast. No matter what they do, they are desperate to maintain their illusion of control. They are desperate to maintain their cloak of anonymity as far as all of the crimes that they've committed against humanity. And folks, get it straight. As the movie Thrive points out, the economic system is rigged, and it's a crime against humanity. The monetary system is fraudulent and rife with fraud from beginning to end. Everything from the banking to the insurance to the way corporations are run, especially multinational corporations, to the way that nations are run, to the way that the world has been run, to the way education is run, the way that science and exploration has been operated. everything is rigged in favor to keep oil as dominant, to keep the pharmaceutical industry dominant, to keep the illusion of separation in control where they pit us one against another. But we're starting to recognize that even if we're conservative or liberal, we can still have the same, listen to me, the same vision of a better world. We may not completely agree on how to get there, but we agree that something is broken that needs to be fixed, and that's an important part of a spiritual awakening. We must first recognize the world that we live in. We must first recognize our personal, listen to me, our personal responsibility for having co-created that world. Because once again, I remind you that governments, or I should say manifestations in physical reality, are the result of something that is deep within us, which is why I'm talking tonight and leading a discussion about occupy yourself. And there's a movement about that too. And Paige Bartholomew did a video on it, my cousin and Carolyn. They created an Occupy Yourself Facebook page. There's so much coming together. But Occupy Yourself has to do with recognizing your responsibility in creating the world. And you can do that. You've done that either overtly or covertly. Either you've done it by action or by purposeful non-action. Because non-action, when you don't speak up for something, you consent to it. Listen to me, you that think that focusing on the negative is only going to bring forth more of the negative. Wake up. What you don't speak about, what you don't look at, you're giving consent to. You're assenting to that. And you're going to get more of it until you wake up and say, hey, I helped create this by my inaction, by hiding my head in the sand, by putting my head up my butt and trying to pretend that this stuff isn't happening. No, this stuff is happening for the awakening. That's the spiritual implication of it. Another one. It's to awaken us. The Illuminati is not here to control us. It's here to awaken us. Do you get it yet? Do you get what Keith Olbermann was saying, that we need Michael Bloomberg? Why? To fan the flames, to keep the fire burning. He says the embers were starting to dwindle, and then they brought in the police, and they've done it in Oakland, they've done it in other cities, and Homeland Security is in the United States is bringing this together. What's it going to do? It's only going to spread the awakening even further. We thrive by awakening. And then when we awaken, we can say, wait a minute, we co-created the world that we've been living in. Now let's co-create a world that works for everybody. Isn't that an amazing way evolution works? It threatens us with extinction to awaken us to our potential because we were lazy and complacent and not seeing. That's where we all were, folks. We didn't realize the world we lived in. We were in a dream. And the dream had to become a nightmare before we finally got shaken enough to open our eyes. And more importantly, to open our minds. And more importantly, even than that, to open our hearts. And that's what's happening. And as we open our hearts and love one another, it changes everything. It transcends our religious differences. It transcends our political differences. It transcends the old paradigm into the new paradigm. It wipes out all the fundamentalist religions, including fundamentalist atheism. It wipes them out. Why? Because we live and move and have our being in what we call God. And that is not anything to do with religion. Not anything to do with religion. And yet it is the central core in all religions. Do you understand what I'm saying? We are coming into unity consciousness. And there are people that don't like that. Some of them are in religions. Some of them are in government. Some of them are in the corporate world. But there is an awakening. Proctor Gamble goes and puts this video on. He interviews David Icke and what's the guy's name from? He's been on Oprah so many times. Deepak Chopra was in the movie, which I watched yesterday, by the way, which is why I'm talking about it today. But these things are all being brought forth, and Proctor Gamble is part of the elite establishment. He's one of the insiders. We're going to see a lot of insiders telling the truth. Why? Because we live and move and have our being in God, as Nassim Haramein indicates in his Revelations of Physics. And physicists, cutting-edge physicists, are always going to be mystics. And yes, I looked up some stuff on Nassim, and there's the naysayers. There's always the establishment that do the critical stuff, that want to hold on to the old paradigm. They resist, they resist, they resist. But what they resist is going to persist. Do you get it? The paradox. The paradox. Sometimes what you resist persists. Sometimes what you fail to resist persists. There is no rule for everything. You have to understand that this is a paradoxical world when we live in duality. And duality is the way creation expresses itself. And it always will express itself in duality. But duality doesn't need to be dueling. Duality can be dancing. That's what it was made to do, to dance. The light and the dark dance. The masculine and the feminine dance. It's a dance of opposites. We are thriving. We are beginning to thrive as we've never done before. And it's part of the awakening, and it's part of co-creation. It's what the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and all of the waves have been about. It's about co-creating heaven on earth. I leave you with this message this morning, and I do thank you for listening. May you be blessed today and every day as you continue to open your mind and open your heart to your own personal awakening, and you learn to occupy yourself. Namaste. Thank you.